All those who inside Russia hope that Trump will come now and we will live. And here you are.
This time, I think, this is already beyond the limit. After what we have just seen in the United States of America, we continue to observe, and I think we will continue to observe in the coming days, weeks and months, after this bacchanalia.
Russia is dissatisfied with the outcome of the elections in the United States. Oh, how dissatisfied.
After this bacchanalia, after this triumph of absolute iniquity in all things, after this terrible cat of Asia, this hybrid monster,
the Kremlin's Nazis are massively grieving.
America is the very country that can end the conflict around Ukraine very quickly. Because this is the same country that is both directly and indirectly involved in this conflict. This is the same country that declares the goal of inflicting a strategic defeat on us.
Do you remember how they all stood for Trump at one time? And what do we see now after he has won?
It seems to me that he will offer us a plan, a deal before January, which will have obviously unacceptable conditions. We will reject it. And then he will spread his hands in the appropriate manner and provide Ukraine with some kind of powerful aid package and remove those restrictions, which Joseph Biden kept to some extent.
Hello. I am Arsen Symboliuk, the host of Channel 24 and the author's blog called Litter Analysis. Today we have a long-awaited episode about the terrible political hangover in which the aggressor state revealed itself after Donald Trump's victory in the U.S. elections. Like, write comments and share this video on social networks to make this hangover of theirs even more severe and unbearable for the Russian imperials. And most importantly, donate to the Defense Forces of Ukraine at the link Fund 24 TV UA in the description. Are you ready? Then let's go.
Good morning, dear friends.
The first of the Russian top propagandists to publicly react to the results of the U.S. elections was Vladimir Solovyov. This creature, I recall, pours its droppings on Russians not only in the evenings, but also in the morning. From 7 o'clock, all Russian children who are going to school and even kindergarten are already up to their ears in Solovyov's litter.
I'm getting old. Didn't sleep all night. Somehow, you know, with all these broadcasts. Old age. Before, I remember. Although, to be honest, I couldn't stay awake before as well.
Solovyov did not change traditions this time either. Voting in the United States has not yet ended, and Solovyov has already begun to pour litter on the Americans.
First, what do we see? There is no democracy. There is no electoral process, transparent, understandable and close. There are some dances with tambourines, a fight between an elephant and a donkey. Let me remind you, totemic signs of the Democratic and Republican parties. And all this, of course, is about nothing.
It's not the same thing as Russia. Which is the light of democracy?
All this, of course, is about nothing. That's just real. All this is about nothing. And the main question now, what is important to us? Who should win? What is decisive for us? Yes, it is generally important for us that there is a civil war there.
What do tens of millions of poor Russian citizens need, freezing in their own apartments and drowning in their own feces?
Terrible.
That's right, more than anything else they need a civil war in the United States.
It is important for us that there is a civil war there.
In fact, with his morning delirium, Solovyov revealed several secrets of the Kremlin at once. At least, he opened a bit. Firstly, the Kremlin had no idea who would win the U.S. elections and with what result. And in order not to mess up ahead of time, propagandists were given a manual not even to comment on the personalities and capabilities of candidates, but to discuss the electoral process in the United States as such. How to discuss? Pour mud.
All this, of course, is about nothing. That's just real.
Secondly, Solovyov's morning cries testify to the fact that the Kremlin not only did not root for Trump. In general, they could keep their fingers crossed for Kamala Harris. And how else to explain the behavior? When they publicly prayed for Trump for 4 years, and as soon as the prospect of his coming to power loomed on the horizon, it turns out that it is not so native to Russians.
For the Americas, we are the enemy. And whoever comes to power, Kamala Harris, Donald Trump, it will be bad for us in different ways. This is a systemic enemy. This must be understood. Our candidates are not there. There is no need to look for miracles. All those who inside Russia hope that Trump will come now and we will live. And here you are.
My guesses, it seems to me, are confirmed by the next heroine of our issue. I don't know how Mashka Zaharova had opened her eyes so early. The so-called representative of the Russian Foreign Ministry also charged that for Russia it does not matter at all who wins there in the United States.
You know, indeed, I believe that it is not an individual candidate who needs to be commented on, and not what American observers are commenting on now. American journalists, American employees of their structures, who are engaged in the counting of votes. This is their business.
Immediately after that, the Foreign Ministry's blue-eyed woman seriously stated that the American electoral system, you see, is not perfect.
It is necessary to comment on what has been going on for many years, decades. Force the whole world to comment on the United States of America, the course of elections and the situation of their democracy. Here, there is something to say. After what we have just seen, true, we see it once again. But this time, I think, it's already beyond the limit. Technological solutions with a thick layer of chocolate are designed to close the gaping wounds of American democracy.
Imagine how confused the viewers of all this nonsense are now. For decades, they have been rubbed in that Russia needs only a czar, and even better an emperor.
God save the Tsar, strong, sovereign.
And it turns out that Russia is the advanced democracy of the world.
And the United States of America, with all its political scientists, with all their civic activists, with all their democracy specialists, must be silenced for years to come. Regarding the assessment of the quality of democracy, level of electoral literacy, and what else do they have? Human rights law. Until they solve their own glaring problems.
The Russians have come to a final stupor. When Putin, with the mustache of his Peskov, refused to congratulate Trump on his victory in the election, at least to do it in sync with world leaders.
How did the Kremlin perceive and assess the results of the presidential election in the United States? Will Vladimir Putin congratulate Trump on his victory, and when will he do it? I don't know when the president will congratulate Trump on the election. But still, let's not forget that we are talking about an unfriendly country, which is directly and indirectly involved in the war against our state.
Soon after, Peskov was thrown out to be torn to pieces by teenagers who, thanks to propaganda, were convinced that Trump was the Messiah for their country.
Dear Dmitry Sergeyevich, what do you think about Trump's victory in the elections in the United States of America? You know, I have nothing to do with Trump's victory, honestly.
Putin's Komsomol members are having fun, but Peskov is having less fun the farther.
America is the very country that can end the conflict around Ukraine very quickly. Because this is the same country that is both directly and indirectly involved in this conflict. This is the same country that declares the goal of inflicting a strategic defeat on us, the Russians, our country, the Russian Federation.
Against this background, the guesses that the Kremlin was betting on the Democratic candidate crystallized even more. Although, let's be honest, Russian propaganda has become more cautious than ever after Trump's victory.
If someone can change something, then it should be welcomed. If these are words during the election race, we have seen this before.
They try to speak vaguely, they try to save face. They try not to betray their own indignation and, of course, not to give away what they are up to. Take, for example, the statements of Dmitry Alkogolovich Medvedev, who wrote, apparently, with a trembling hand a whole post on Telegram about the elections in the United States. But just listen to what kind of fast it is.
About the stubborn Trump. I wrote on Telegram a couple of days ago about the virulent bipartisan anti-Russian consensus on Capitol Hill. These estimates are fair, including taking into account the majority of elephants received in the Senate. But Trump has one quality that is useful to us. As a businessman to the core, he mortally dislikes to spend money on various hangers-on, on allies, on charity projects, and on voracious international organizations.
Not the same as Putin, who bought an entire general secretary of a voracious and completely useless international organization.
And this is a tartar dish, chak-chak.
Sorry, I digress. Let's listen to the informational burp of Dmitry Alkogolik.
Toxic Bandera Ukraine is in the same row. The question is how much Trump will be forced to give for the war. He is stubborn, but the system is stronger. In any case, today the green stuff in Kyiv will be buried up to its ears in white powder.
So, do you understand something? I don't. Trump is great, because he will throw Ukraine and will not give it money in any case. But in general, he does not solve anything, because the system is stronger and will force him to give money. He will be definitely forced. Moreover, theoretically, this money may even become more than before. But at the same time, the green ointment in Kiev in connection with Trump's re-election must be buried up to its ears in powder, either from joy or from grief. As they say, Medvedev definitely knows better. One way or another, he, Medvedev, is in turmoil, and therefore Putin is in turmoil. Therefore, propaganda was given a clear command not to drive horses, to wait for what Trump himself would offer them. That is, the Kremlin decided to give the initiative to the Americans. It is impossible to rejoice at Trump's election, because it's scary what he can do. But they also do not want to throw mud at Trump personally. After all, he is not a liberal, that is, in the eyes of Putin, he did not tolerate it. Moreover, Trump is more of an emotional character than a rational one. He does not forgive personal offenses. Therefore, neither in Solovyov's statements, nor in Medvedev's statements, nor in anyone else's propaganda nonsense, can we hear any traditional go-ida at all. No usual cries about a nuclear strike on Washington. That's it, the tails are tucked in. But due to the fact that they have been preparing their masses for this day for years and riveting the image of Trump as a friend of Russia, the people on this day clung to the TV screens and demand spectacles.
People gathered for debauchery.
According to all their propaganda rules, at the moment of such emotional intensity, the people urgently need to throw some kind of bone. Either a bone of fierce hatred or a bone of unbridled joy. Therefore, propagandists in general seem to blame the United States, and its electoral system in particular. But no more than that. They try not to reveal their cards. They try, but it doesn't work. Russian propaganda would not be Russian propaganda if there were not someone in its ranks who would frame everyone at the most inopportune moment. A State Duma deputy and, at the same time, the host of the propaganda show, 60 Minutes, Yevgeny Skabev, formerly known as Popov, has openly revealed what they are really thinking in the Kremlin right now.
I don't see anything good from the results that we have now. As for Trump's further actions, it seems to me that he will offer us a plan, a deal before January, which will be with obviously unacceptable conditions. We will reject it. And then he will spread his hands in the appropriate manner and provide Ukraine with some kind of powerful aid package and remove those restrictions, which Joseph Biden observed to some extent.
I may be wrong, but, in my opinion, for the first time in a very long time, if not in his entire life, Popov was sincere in front of the cameras.
But this is my assumption, and I hope that this particular assumption will not come true. Thank you.
As a cherry on this election cake, there was a good old knife in the back of Vladimir Putin. This time it was thrust in and well done by Putin's Belarusian vassal, Lukashenko. He, instead of showing solidarity with the host diplomatically remaining silent, congratulated Trump in sync with world leaders.
The first world leader to congratulate Trump on his victory, and it's not Putin, the president of El Salvador, Nayib Bukele. By this minute, Trump was also congratulated by Hungarian Prime Minister Orbán, Austrian Prime Minister Hammer, Macron, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer also wrote a congratulatory tweet. It has just become known that Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu also congratulated Trump, and Belarusian President Lukashenko also announced Trump's victory.
Judging by the fact that this news was discussed live by Russian propagandists, Putin will still remember this for Lukashenko. Although, the further it goes, the more the memory of the Kremlin maniac shrinks in volume. After all, it depends on Belarus almost as much as on Iran or the DPRK. In any incomprehensible situation, Putin will come to Lukashenko either for gasoline, or for scarce food, or for, in the future, electricity, or for something else. All this could also be brought from Asia, but it is quite long and expensive. And here it is like a spare country at arm's length, or rather, an outstretched hand. In short, Lukashenko also smells imperial blood and does not disdain to sometimes reopen the wound of Putin's pride. What general conclusion can we draw from Russia's reaction to the US election? In Moscow, at least, they tensed up, at most they were scared. All the cries that Trump would immediately surrender Ukraine to Putin stopped even before the publication of the voting results. And as the states on this map turned red, the silence became more and more ringing. Shouts that the United States is the eternal, existential enemy of Russia, who must be defeated, regardless of the name of their leader. This is unlikely to work on the Russian television public. Why? Because they, the armchair Russian imperials, were promised a lightning victory in the 3-year SMO. All that remains is for our Trump to win. And now they are being told.
And here you are.
Instead of a lightning victory, Russians receive only butter at the price of diamonds and a mortgage on housing with an overpayment of 900%. Vladimir Putin had a good plan, you will agree.
The special military operation is proceeding in strict accordance with the schedule, according to the plan.
To disrupt Putin's plans even faster and even more spectacularly, donate to the Defense Forces of Ukraine using the Fund 24 TVUA link in the description or using this QR code. And of course, like this video, write a comment and share the video on social networks so that as many people as possible can see it. And we can win the battle against Russian propaganda as soon as possible. The most powerful propaganda machine in history. See you in the next issues of Litter Analysis. Take care of yourself, take care of Ukraine. Glory to Ukraine.